Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Brews and Reviews. It's Knowledge, and today I'm reviewing Statik Selektah's new album, The Balancing Act, and I am sipping on a Sea Quench Ale from Milton, Delaware, the brewery Dogfish Head. This comes in at a 4.7%, and this is somewhere between a Kolsch and a Ghost. Extremely sour, and it'll have you going... This playlist is stacked, and you know it's a Statik Selektah album because we've got Black Thought, Joey Badass, Nas, Conway the Machine, Benny the Butcher, Evidence, Blue, Killer Mike, Havoc, and Sean Price, just to name a few. Statik always brings the best, most skilled artists together for his producer projects. When this dropped, it reminded me that we haven't really had a good producer solo album this year, and I always like to get a few of those in every year, usually because it means fire, hard beats, and MCs just showing off over them. Less focus on substance of the song and just focus of how it sounds and how hype it'll get you, and you need that every once in a while, especially to give us breaks in how hard and tough this year was. This is Statik's first producer project since 2017's 8, his last album, but he is fresh off of several collab albums, including the good album that he did with CJ Fly and his collaboration with Terminology 1982. The Healing. Who better to kick things off than Black Thought? Right from the jump, we have him spitting some very timely lyrics, and Black Thought's feature game is on point this year, let alone that he released a great project on his own, Streams of Thought Volume 3. He's done great collaborations from Eminem to Ciroc to Shay Noor to Russ. He's just been all over the place, and every one of them hits, this included. The beat's a little more toned down and subject matter a little heavier than we might expect as the intro for what might be a hype album, as Thought speaks on police brutality. But in short, he ends it on a positive note, basically saying that success, or in his case, music, is the way to heal. Keep it moving. This was the first single off the album, and he brings together Nas, Joey Badass, and Gary Clark Jr. for this one. Nas and Joey are trading quick verses on this, and when Nas comes on, he's kind of taking us back to the world is yours type of flow. He says, "Possessed by Marcus Garvey, the vessel, the body, ancestors inside me, I'm starting the insurrection." Joey may also have recognized the similarity in Nas's flow to the classic The World Is Yours, and he chose to use one of the many classic quotables from that song. He says, "'Cause it's a hassle getting caught up in the devil's lasso. And that's what a wise man once told me. I gotta love and respect for my OGs." You can tell by his previous projects and these lines that he really respects his elders and the 90s hip-hop that came before him. There's an extended outro on this track with some violins and some great record scratching and some surprisingly light guitar from Gary Clark Jr. Play Around. I reviewed this as a single, so after you watch this review, go check out my full review of that. I went in depth, but I will say it again. Conway and Killer Mike are two heavyweights of 2020. Period. And I said then that when I think of 2020, I'll think Conway, Killer, and COVID. That's how prevalent they have been this year. And after listening to this whole album, this is still one of the hardest, hypest beats on it. It's got some Woo style pianos with a Kanye style crooning auto-tuned loop and a hard bass line for these MCs to get hype on. Conway kicks it off, redefining the word GOAT, saying that it means that he's the grimiest of all time. And Killer Mike comes in with one of the greatest flows of the year, possibly his best flow of the year, which is saying a lot given everything that he did on RTJ4. 2 Chainz and Allen Kingdom also add to this track, making it one of the highlights of the album. Hard Living. This features Dave East and Method Man, and this may be the first song ever that features a rapper and the actor that plays that rapper on TV. So that's really interesting. And a little aside here, but Wu-Tang and American Saga, love that show. Great show. But something that's a little distracting is Dave East looks nothing like Method Man. In fact, he's like a foot taller than the rest of the cast, and I don't remember that being the dynamic in Wu-Tang. And really, all of the actors on the show look nothing like the people that they're portraying. Did the casting directors not know that we know what these guys look like? But it is what it is. It's a different story and still an enjoyable show. And Dave East does great on that show, by the way. We get a well-produced, multi-layered beat with a funky bass line. And just like he does on the show, Dave does a good job with a smooth flow that rides the bass with ease. But Meth has been the smoothest in the game for a long time, and he shows it again here. And I said that Black Thought has some of the best features of the year. Meth may just have him beat with one feature alone, and that was his feature this year on Lemon, and he does it again here. He's bringing the classic wordplay into this. Meth says, "The track got extendos, Malcolm X with the gun that's in your window, big drum be sounding like crescendos." And of course, he's referencing the famous picture of Malcolm X with him looking out the window, holding a gun, the same picture that's featured on the album cover or parodied on the album cover from Boogie Down Productions, By Any Means Necessary. Truly an iconic photo. He's referencing that. But when he says in your window, he pronounces it like innuendo, meaning a double play on words, and Meth letting you know that he's as hard as that photo is. He's as hard and grimy as Malcolm X was at that moment. Next track is Time. This is an interesting one. This features Jack Harlow, and I know this dude is hugely popular right now, but it's not somebody that I've really checked for at all. I really had no desire to check out the rest of his music. This song doesn't necessarily make me want to do that, but there are some very heartfelt lyrics here. To match the somber beat, he says, "Right after Mac Miller died, Statik took me to the club and told me what a great person that he was. First person I had spoke to that was hurt the way he was. It stuck with me then, and it still does." The song is about Harlow wishing for more time and hoping that he has a lot more time on this earth, which seems funny at first because we know that Jack Harlow is a young dude. But in this context and talking about Mac Miller, who died at 26, you see it more as Harlow saying that he hoped the game doesn't take him out or the fast life doesn't get to him. And we've got a flute solo playing us out on this one, as well as some signature Statik scratches. Watch Me is another collab with Joey Badass, and this is a throwback and homage to A Tribe Called Quest, from Statik sampling Yeah Y'all to Joey interpolating the chorus from Check the Rhyme, one of the greatest hip-hop songs ever. He asks, "You on point, Stat?" And this is why we like Joey Badass, because he does pay homage to these classics. America is Canceled. This is one of the best tracks lyrically on the album. We've got Terminology and 2/3 of the Locks in Jadakiss and Styles P. And Terminology is not sugarcoating anything with his verse. He says, "Mass incarcerations, we can't forget what Clinton and Biden did. They all devils selling off their souls on all levels. My dogs rebels, run up on a tank with a pebble. The next cop that kill an unarmed man need a public beheading and televise it so nobody'll fucking forget it." Just to make sure we don't forget it, Statik cuts up that last line in the chorus, and then Jada goes next. He does all right, sticking somewhat to the subject matter, but then Styles P also has a great verse, and he says, "Classism is the new segregation. They'll gentrify your hood like it's the new destination. White people come, they throw their Whole Foods up, or their Starbucks even have tofu cuts. No Substitute So we have 2/3 of the Locks on this album, and we've also got 2/3 of Griselda. Now these are the best 2/3 in my opinion for both groups. This one features Benny the Butcher and, wait for it, Paul Wall. And Benny does what he does, but I'd actually say that Paul has the best verse on the track, and he lets us know he hasn't been slouching even though we haven't heard from him as much recently. And he says, "Say, I'd rather work too hard than not hard enough. Laziness I rebuff on point of the cuff. Put in the work. Don't expect things to come to you without working hard for them." Paul Wall knows that, and he's putting that message out there. Off My Mind, and one thing I love about producer albums is they usually feature lesser known talent, and they use that to showcase their hunger, this platform that they're getting on this bigger name producer's album, and they just go off, and it makes you want to check into their catalog. That being said, this one features Fly Anakin and Roam Streets over a bouncy and soulful beat. These guys, however, don't really seize the opportunity. Now, they don't take away from the track at all. It's still an enjoyable listen, but they're not grabbing my ear and making me want to take the time to dig further into what they've done. Welcome to the Game, and these are possibly lesser known artists on this one as well. However, when I saw the track list, I was really looking forward to hearing this track because it features Marlon Craft, who has a stellar flow, and he's an up-and-comer that's out there, put out a lot of good music, and Kota the Friend, who had, in my opinion, the album of the year last year with Photo, and also a pretty good album this year with Everything. And this reunites these two who worked together on the track called Mom's Whiskey that was on Marlon Craft's last project, and that is a great song. Go check out Mom's Whiskey by these two. For his part on this song, Marlon Craft keeps it heavy and light somehow at the same time. He says, "Can't keep my mind right while life giving me lemons in the limelight. Godlike, here kid, try Sprite." Kota displays a great flow on his verse as well, and this is a little more hype than what we normally hear him over. His own production and his album and rhyming style is usually really laid back, so it's nice to hear him over something different. The kids I grew up with, all they know is low ceilings. They wouldn't rent to me, so bitch, I bought the whole building. Soul Custody, and we've got two West Coast underground heavyweights on this one in Evidence and Blue, and I have a few rants about both of these guys. Evidence in particular, I love a lot of tracks that he's on, and I love the old Dilated People stuff, but I just don't understand why he doesn't try to expand himself with the flow. He has had the same flow for 20 years. He does have some good lyrics. On this one, he has some good jewels. He says, "Two sides to every story, I'm just playing the ref. Left the drama in the rear view, ain't looked back yet. If objects appear bigger, I don't take them as threats." And then there's Blue. On a review earlier this year, I had a complaint about Blue. I said that he dropped a classic album, and then everything that he did after that was just nowhere near with what he did on that particular album, Below the Heavens, of course. But then he immediately proved me wrong, and he dropped Miles. And on this one, Blue tells us how he stays being a prolific artist. He says, "Some things you just can't prevent from happening. Like the summoning versus just come to me." With No More, we get a fun, energetic track featuring MOP's Lil Fame. You can't get much more hype than that. We've also got Rim the Villain and Smoke DZA on this one. All of them trade verses, keep it moving from one verse to the next with no chorus in between. And this is just a fun, quick listen for a high-powered song. Ralph Lauren's Closet. This is another highlight of the album, and I love beats like this with the vocal chorus harmony sampled and pitched and chopped up. But even more importantly on this, we've got Thurston Howell III and a surprise verse from Sean P. Sean, of course, takes the song with his extremely recognizable flow and rhyme scheme. He says, awk, the flow toxic, cock, the four pop it. Maybe it hit some people sooner, but it hit me on this track in particular, probably because Sean P has been dead since Griselda really started popping and got popular, but their flow is just straight out of his book, and everything that he did post Helter Skelter and the rhyme scheme that he had developed when he became Sean P, a solo artist, that is what Conway and Benny the Butcher sound like, and they must have been highly influenced by this former king of New York to make them the current kings of New York. Balance Beam, this song features JFK, CJ Fly, and Nick Grant. And this really lets you know what the subject of the title of this album is about, the balancing beam or the balancing act. As the lyrics let us know, this is the balance between career and family. And Statik will further drive that point home a little bit later towards the end of the album. Way Up is a great song lyrically, one of the best on the album. And we've already heard homages to other deceased great MCs, talking about Mac Miller, and we're talking about Sean P. But this one pays respect to some more deceased MCs, and that's Pimp C and Prodigy. And Statik doesn't just get any random artist to speak on these guys. They're partners in rhyme, the artist that knew them best. And I'm talking about Bun B, who of course was in the group UGK with Pimp C, and Havoc, who was in Mobb Deep with Prodigy. Bun kicks it off saying about his brother, "You changed the world, you left your voice. Recognized as a legend, the people's choice. You were an underground king in the game, and I'ma make sure the whole world remembers your name." And Havoc also speaks from the heart. He says, "Thanking God for that last time in Vegas that we had a ball. Ups and downs, we had our shares, but we would still perform. Knew you longer than I didn't, part of me is missing. I ain't even gonna pretend this shit is wild different." Immortal, Bobby Sessions is featured here, and he gives one of the more unique flows of the lesser known artists on this project. And this feels like that classic freestyle over a DJ beat, the DJ keeping it moving and the MC is just going off. I'm really enjoying this flow from Bobby Sessions. And this is what I look for in producer albums that MC and have me digging into their back catalog before they had this high profile feature, and I will be doing that for Bobby Sessions. A hidden track to round it out with Statik's daughter, here referred to as Harley Harl, singing about how much that she loves her dad, and it's a really sweet track and a nice inclusion to bring the title full circle as well as the album cover and let us know what the balancing act is really about. This is a good, snappy listen. It's mostly what we want in a producer album, with several head nodders and hype tracks, with some fire 16s from some of the best rappers to ever do it, as well as some of the best rappers in the game right now. A couple things that stray from the traditional producer album is it wasn't all reaching for bangers. There was a little more focus on substance, a little more lyrics thrown in there than just MCs going off on the flow, and that's the good part. The bad part is there was a lack of introducing new or unknown MCs to the world. Statik tried. He gave these guys their space, only most of them did not capitalize on it. With the exception of Bobby Sessions and Marlon Craft and Kota the Friend, who I've already been into, but this may be an introduction for some. They all did their thing, but the rest did not put their best foot forward. Or maybe they did, and that's even worse. Either way, I'm not checking for the rest of their catalog. Best flows on this album were Method Man, Nas, Killer Mike, and Bobby Sessions. Best lyrics on this album are Jack Harlow, Havoc, and Terminology. All in all, this is an enjoyable listen, and you can't go wrong with 16 tracks of Statik Selektah production. I give this a 7 out of a 12-pack. Thank you for watching my review of Statik Selektah's The Balancing Act. If you like this, go ahead and hit like now and hit me up in the comments. You can subscribe to my channel. The link's popping up right now. I drop hip-hop and hops related content consistently, So until I see you next time, keep buzzing.